Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the transport ship on his station Kepler 7. The artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth's, making his backpack dig into his shoulders. Around him, dozens of alien species moved through the crowded docking bay like a living rainbow of scales, fur, and chitinous shells. He was just a mechanic from Luna Colony, here to fix broken mining equipment on the outer rim. Nothing special about him except maybe his stubborn streak and his habit of helping strays back home. His supervisor had warned him about getting involved with alien affairs, but Marcus had never been good at following advice. The station buzzed with activity. Tall, blue-skinned Zentari merchants haggled with insectoid traders over shipping rates. A group of crystalline beings that looked like walking diamonds discussed quantum mechanics in musical tones. Marcus had read about these species in training manuals, but seeing them in person made his head spin. He was looking for Bay 94, where his equipment waited when he heard it. A low, pained growl echoing from a side corridor marked with warning signs in 12 different languages. The universal symbol for authorized personnel only glowed red above the entrance. Marcus knew he should keep walking. His job was to fix machines, not investigate strange noises. But that sound tugged at something deep in his chest. It reminded him of the injured cat he'd found behind his apartment on Luna, the one that had scratched him bloody before learning to trust him. The corridor led to what looked like a holding area. Behind thick energy barriers, various creatures paced in cramped cells. Most were clearly intelligent beings, not animals. Marcus felt sick realizing this was some kind of prison or worse. In the furthest cell, something moved in the shadows. As his eyes adjusted, Marcus saw her. She was magnificent and terrible at the same time. Standing nearly 7 feet tall on powerful legs, she had the build of a large cat, but walked upright like a person. Her fur was deep black with silver markings that seemed to shift in the dim light. Her hands ended in retractable claws, and her amber eyes held an intelligence that made Marcus's breath catch. She was also clearly suffering. Thick metal bands around her neck, wrists, and ankles glowed with the same energy as the cell barriers. Every few seconds, the bands would pulse brighter, and she would flinch, her muscles spasming from whatever they were doing to her. A nearby data pad displayed information in Broken Standard. Specimen 47A, Kithran species, neural suppression active, scheduled for processing in 2 cycles. Neural suppression. They were messing with her brain, probably trying to break her will. Marcus had heard rumors about illegal slavery operations on the Outer Rim, but seeing it made his hands clench into fists. The creature noticed him watching. Instead of snarling or backing away, she approached the barrier with careful, measured steps. When she was close enough, she placed one clawed hand against the energy field and looked directly into his eyes. Marcus had worked with animals his whole life, and he recognized that look. It wasn't pleading or desperate. It was the look of someone who had given up hope, but was still willing to take one last chance. She was asking him a question without words. Are you like them? Or are you different? He pulled out his maintenance tools, the same ones he used to repair mining equipment. The energy barrier had a control panel nearby, probably for feeding or cleaning the cells. It was alien tech, but energy was energy, and Marcus understood electrical systems better than he understood people sometimes. I'm going to get you out of here, he whispered to her, not sure if she could understand Standard. Just give me a minute. Her ear flicked, and she tilted her head slightly. Maybe she understood, or maybe she just recognized the tone. Either way, she stepped back and watched him work. The control panel was more complex than Earth technology, but the principles were the same. Marcus traced the power flow with his scanner, looking for the main circuit that controlled her cell. He had to be careful not to trigger any alarms, and he definitely couldn't afford to electrocute himself on alien voltage. As he worked, footsteps echoed from the main corridor. Someone was coming, and they sounded like they were in a hurry. Marcus's hands moved faster, sweat dripping onto the alien console as he rerouted power through his portable battery pack. The energy barrier flickered once, twice, then died completely. The Kithran stepped out of her cell just as 3 figures appeared at the corridor entrance. The 3 figures rushing toward them wore the dark uniforms of station security, but something was wrong with their movements. They jerked and twitched like broken robots, and their eyes glowed with the same sickly light as the control collars. Oh, Hell, Marcus muttered, realizing these weren't normal security guards. They were slaves too, just a different kind. Someone was controlling them remotely, turning living beings into puppets. The Kithrin moved like liquid lightning. One moment she was standing beside Marcus. The next she was in front of him, her claws extended and her lips pulled back to show teeth that belonged on a nightmare. But she didn't attack. Instead, she spoke in a voice like honey poured over gravel. "You freed me, little human." "Why?" Marcus blinked, surprised she could speak standard. "Because nobody deserves to be in a cage." She studied his face for a long moment while the control guards stumbled closer. "Your species is young and foolish. Do you know what I am?" "Someone who needed help," Marcus replied, pulling out his plasma cutter. It was designed for metal work, not combat, but it was better than nothing. The Kithrin made a sound that might have been laughter. "I am Zarathek of the Night Prowlers, daughter of the War Pride, trained in 17 forms of combat before I saw my 10th season. These puppets cannot harm me. But you, soft little human, you they will tear apart." The first control guard raised some kind of energy weapon, but Zarathek moved before it could fire. She flowed around Marcus like water around a stone, her claws finding the guard's throat with surgical precision. The puppet dropped without a sound, its control collar sparking as it hit the floor. The other two guards attacked together, moving within human coordination. Zarathek met them head-on, her movements so fast Marcus could barely follow. She fought like nature itself, all grace and terrible purpose. Within seconds, both guards were down, their control systems destroyed. "We must move," Zarathek said, barely breathing hard. "They will send more, and next time they will come prepared for resistance." Marcus nodded, grabbing his tools. "There's got to be a way off this station. My ship is small, but no." Zarathek's voice cut through his planning. "You do not understand. I was not captured randomly, human. I was taken because of who I am, because of what my people represent. The ones who hold this place, they are building something terrible." As if summoned by her words, the station's PA system crackled to life. The voice that emerged spoke in perfect, emotionless standard. "Specimen 47A has been compromised. Lockdown protocol initiated. All units converge on detention level 7. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in hellish red, and Marcus heard the distant thunder of running feet. Lots of feet, moving with military precision. "What do they want with you?" Marcus asked as they ran toward the maintenance shafts he'd memorized on his way in. Zarathek's answer chilled his blood. "My people were guardians once, protectors of this entire sector. We fought a war that lasted 3 centuries against things from beyond the dark. When the war ended, most of my kind chose to sleep, to rest until we were needed again. But some of us stayed awake, stayed watchful." She paused to rip open a maintenance panel with her bare claws. "I was hunting the ones who took this station. They call themselves the Collective, and they turned free minds into empty vessels for their will. They captured me because my neural patterns hold the awakening codes for my sleeping people." Marcus felt like he'd been hit by a shuttle. "They can wake up your entire species. Worse, with my codes, they can control the awakening process. Instead of guardians, they will create an army of enslaved warriors with the power to conquer galaxies." The maintenance tunnel was narrow and hot, filled with pipes and cables that hummed with alien energy. Marcus's human frame barely fit, but Zarathek moved through it like she was designed for tight spaces. "How long before they crack your codes?" Marcus asked, trying not to think about armies of mind-controlled super warriors sweeping across known space. The neurosuppression was breaking down my mental barriers slowly. Without it, I can resist for perhaps 6 of your hours before they resort to more direct methods. 6 hours to stop a galactic catastrophe. Marcus would have laughed if he wasn't so terrified. They emerged into a cargo bay filled with shipping containers from 100 different worlds. Some of the containers were moving slightly, and Marcus realized they probably held more prisoners. The scope of the operation was staggering. "There," Zarathek pointed to a communications array near the ceiling. "If we can access that, I can send a warning to my people. Tell them not to trust any awakening signal they receive." Marcus looked at the array, then at the security forces that were surely flooding into the bay behind them. His plasma cutter had maybe 10 minutes of charge left, and Zarathek, for all her skill, couldn't fight an entire army. But Sometimes being human meant doing impossible things anyway. Can you reach it if I give you a boost? He asked, already moving toward a stack of containers. Zarathek's amber eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. You continue to surprise me, little human. Yes, but we will need time to upload the warning codes. Marcus smiled grimly as the first security teams burst through the bay doors. Time I can give you. Just promise me something. What? When this is over, when your people are safe, remember that not all young species are foolish. Zarathek's hand touched his shoulder briefly, her claws carefully retracted. I will remember, Marcus Chun of Earth. Your courage honors both our kinds. Marcus positioned himself behind a massive shipping container marked with biohazard symbols as the security forces spread out across the cargo bay. Unlike the control guards from before, these moved with purpose and intelligence. They wore heavier armor and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Surrender the specimen, and you will be processed quickly, announced their leader, a tall figure whose face was hidden behind a reflective visor. Resist, and we will take her anyway after we dissect your neural pathways for study. Counteroffer, Marcus called back, charging his plasma cutter to maximum output. Go recycle yourselves. The response was immediate. Energy bolts sizzled through the air, turning sections of the container into molten slag. Marcus ducked and rolled, using his knowledge of industrial equipment to stay mobile. These weren't mining tools he was hiding behind. They were cargo containers designed to survive space travel. They could take a lot of punishment. Above him, Zarathek had reached the communications array and was working within human speed. Her claws extended into fine manipulator tools, allowing her to interface directly with alien technology. Sparks flew as she bypassed security protocols that would have taken Marcus hours to crack. Uploading warning protocols now, she called down. I need 3 more minutes. 3 minutes. Marcus checked his plasma cutter's charge indicator and saw he had maybe 90 seconds of continuous fire left. Math had never been his favorite subject, but even he could see the problem with those numbers. The security forces were advancing in a coordinated pattern, using their superior firepower to methodically destroy his cover. These weren't the mindless puppets from before. Someone was directing them with tactical intelligence, probably the same collective consciousness that ran this horror show. Marcus popped up from behind a container and fired a sustained burst at their leader. The plasma stream struck the figure's armor and sent it staggering backward but didn't drop it. In return, 3 energy bolts nearly took his head off. Stubborn little mammal, the leader's voice carried across the bay, distorted by electronic modulation. You cannot comprehend what you interfere with. We offer unity, purpose, freedom from the chaos of individual thought. Thanks, but I like chaos, Marcus replied, moving to a new position. Keeps life interesting. He was running out of containers to hide behind when something unexpected happened. One of the shipping crates near the security forces suddenly burst open and a massive shape charged out. It was another alien, this one built like a cross between a bear and a tank, with thick hide that seemed to absorb energy weapon fire. For the glory of the 7 suns, the creature roared, smashing 2 guards aside with arms like tree trunks. More containers opened. A graceful, 4-armed being that moved like a dancer but fought like a hurricane. A crystalline entity that refracted energy bolts back at their shooters. A pack of wolf-like creatures that hunted with perfect coordination. Marcus realized what was happening. The other prisoners were breaking free, probably inspired by seeing Zarathek's escape. The cargo bay erupted into chaos as dozens of alien species turned on their captors with the fury of the wrongfully imprisoned. 2 minutes, Zarathek called, her voice tight with concentration. The battle was turning, but the security forces were adapting. Their leader had produced some kind of control device and was speaking into it rapidly. Marcus heard the distant whine of heavy machinery powering up somewhere deeper in the station. That couldn't be good. A new sound filled the air, a low harmonic that made Marcus's teeth ache. The rebelling aliens suddenly stopped fighting and began clutching their heads in obvious pain. Whatever frequency the station was broadcasting, it was affecting every non-human nervous system in the bay. Except Zarathek, who was apparently too focused on her task to be fully affected. But even she was slowing down, her movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. Marcus realized with cold clarity that he was the only one in the bay who wasn't being affected by the sonic weapon. Human neurology was apparently different enough from the galactic standard that the frequency didn't touch him. The security leader was walking toward Zarathek's position, moving with mechanical confidence. Primitive countermeasures, it announced. All organic neural patterns have been mapped and cataloged. Resistance is meaningless. Marcus stepped out from behind his cover, plasma cutter raised. You missed one. The leader turned toward him, and, for the first time, Marcus saw surprise in its posture. Impossible. The neural disruptor affects all known organic cognition patterns. Congratulations, Marcus said, advancing slowly. You just learned something new about humans. He fired. The plasma stream struck the leader's center mass, and this time the armor failed completely. The figure collapsed, its control device skittering across the floor. Marcus kicked it aside and fired again, reducing it to slag. The harmonic frequency died with a discordant shriek. Around the bay, the alien prisoners straightened up, shaking off the effects of the neural disruptor. They looked at Marcus with expressions ranging from confusion to something approaching awe. 1 minute, Zarathek announced, her voice stronger now that the interference was gone. But Marcus could hear more security forces approaching. The station's automated defenses were probably coming online too. Even with the help of the freed prisoners, they couldn't hold this position much longer. Is there any way to speed this up, he called. Not without risking data corruption, Zarathek replied. The warning codes must be perfect, or my people will not trust them. Marcus nodded, understanding. Sometimes you had to trust the expert, even when the situation was falling apart around you. He turned to face the approaching reinforcements, plasma cutter held ready. Around him, the alien prisoners formed a defensive line. They were from dozens of different species, different worlds, different star systems. But they all understood that freedom was worth fighting for. 30 seconds, Zarathek called. Marcus smiled grimly. 30 seconds to hold the line against overwhelming odds. Just another day in the life of a human mechanic. The 30 seconds stretched like an eternity. Marcus's plasma cutter finally died just as the new wave of security forces burst into the cargo bay. These ones were different again, heavier, and more mechanical than the previous groups. Some looked like they might have once been organic beings, but now were more machine than flesh. Upload complete, Zarathek announced, dropping gracefully from the communications array. The warning has been sent across all Kithran sleep networks. A new voice echoed through the bay, deeper and more resonant than any they'd heard before. It seemed to come from the station itself, as if the walls were speaking. Impressive but ultimately futile. You have merely delayed the inevitable. The collective grows stronger with each mind we absorb, each species we perfect. Your warning will be ignored when we demonstrate the power of unity. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's recycled air. Who the hell is that? The Prime Node, Zarathek replied, her voice tight with ancient hatred. The original consciousness that started the collective centuries ago. My people fought it before, during the Dark War. We thought it was destroyed. The mechanical security forces weren't attacking yet, just surrounding the group of freed prisoners. They moved with eerie coordination, like parts of a single organism rather than individual units. The Dark War taught us valuable lessons, the Prime Node continued. Individual consciousness is chaos. Free will is inefficiency. We offer something better. Perfect unity, shared purpose, the end of loneliness and uncertainty. One of the freed prisoners, the massive bear tank creature, snarled a response in its own language. The Prime Node seemed to understand, because its laughter echoed through the bay like grinding metal. Your defiance is noted and will be corrected. But first, a demonstration of what resistance costs. The station shuddered around them, and Marcus realized something terrible was happening to the other levels. Through the bay's observation windows, he could see into adjacent sections where beings that had been going about their normal business suddenly stopped moving. Their eyes began to glow with that familiar sickly light. It's turning the entire station population into puppets, Marcus whispered. Thousands of beings were being enslaved simultaneously, their minds wiped clean to make room for the collective's will. Marcus watched in horror as families were torn apart, as individuals ceased to exist and became empty vessels for an alien consciousness. This is what awaits your species, the Prime Node said, its voice somehow reaching inside Marcus's head now. Humanity will make excellent additions to our unity. Your neural patterns are unique. They will provide fascinating new perspectives once we remove the chaos of independent thought. Marcus felt something probing at the edges of his mind, looking for cracks in his mental defenses. It was subtle at first, like a whisper just below the threshold of hearing. But gradually it grew stronger, more insistent. "Resist it," Zarathek said urgently. "Do not let it inside your thoughts." But the pressure was enormous. Marcus could feel his sense of self starting to blur at the edges. The voice in his head grew stronger, offering relief from fear, from responsibility, from the terrible burden of making decisions in an uncertain universe. "Join us willingly," the Prime Node whispered inside his skull. "And we will make your death quick when we process your companions." That did it. Marcus had always been stubborn, but threats to people he cared about made him downright ornery. He grabbed onto that anger and used it like an anchor, pulling his scattered thoughts back together. "You know what?" he said aloud, his voice cutting through the psychic pressure. "I've met your kind before." The mental probing paused, surprised by his resistance. "Not exactly like you," Marcus continued, stepping forward despite the ranks of mechanical soldiers surrounding them. "But bullies are bullies, whether they're in a schoolyard or running a galactic collective. And I learned a long time ago that bullies only understand one thing." He reached into his toolkit and pulled out a small device he'd almost forgotten about. It was a resonance hammer, designed for testing metal stress points. Completely useless as a weapon, unless you knew something about harmonics and structural engineering. "What are you doing, human?" The Prime Node's voice was sharp with concern. Marcus smiled and activated the device. "Something stupid." The resonance hammer was designed to find the natural frequency of metal structures, the specific vibration that would cause catastrophic failure. Marcus had studied the station's layout on his way in, had noted the unusual harmonic properties of its construction materials. He struck the deck plating with the hammer, and the entire station rang like a bell. The sound was wrong, discordant, sending shockwaves through the artificial intelligence that had spread itself throughout the station systems. The Prime Node's scream of pain reverberated through every speaker, every communication channel. "The harmonic frequency," Zarathek breathed in amazement. "You found its resonance point." Marcus hit the deck again, harder this time. The station shuddered, and sparks began flying from control panels throughout the bay. The mechanical soldiers froze in place as their control signals became corrupted by the harmonic interference. "Impossible," the Prime Node gasped. "Our integration with station systems is complete. You cannot affect us through mere vibration." "That's where you're wrong," Marcus replied, striking a third time. "See, I know something about complex systems that you apparently don't. The more complicated something gets, the more ways it can break." The station's lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but systems throughout the facility were failing as the harmonic cascade spread through the superstructure. The Prime Node had integrated so completely with the station that it couldn't separate itself from the failing infrastructure. "Every mind we have absorbed," the Prime Node said, its voice growing weaker and more distorted. "Every consciousness we have perfected, it will all be lost." "Good," Marcus said simply. The mechanical soldiers began collapsing as their control signals failed completely. Throughout the visible sections of the station, the enslaved population was blinking and looking around in confusion as their minds were suddenly their own again. But Zarathek was frowning. "The damage is too extensive. The station's structural integrity is failing." As if to emphasize her point, a deep groan echoed through the superstructure, and the deck tilted slightly to one side. "We need to evacuate," Marcus said. "How many people can we get to the escape pods?" "Not enough," Zarathek replied. "Not nearly enough." Marcus looked around at the freed prisoners, at the thousands of beings throughout the station who were just now realizing they were free. He thought about the small transport that had brought him here, about his simple mission to fix some mining equipment. Sometimes being human meant accepting that you couldn't save everyone. Sometimes it meant trying anyway. Marcus stared at the chaos around them as the station continued to tear itself apart. Thousands of beings were trapped on a dying structure, and there was no way the available escape pods could handle that many evacuees. The math was brutal and unforgiving. But as he watched the freed prisoners organizing themselves, helping the confused and newly liberated population, an idea began to form. It was completely insane, would probably get everyone killed, and violated about 17 different safety protocols. Zarathek, he said suddenly, your people, the sleeping ones, where are they? Scattered across the sector in hidden installations, she replied, helping an injured crystalline being to its feet. Why? How long would it take them to get here if they were awake? Her amber eyes narrowed. Perhaps 6 hours with their fastest ships. But the awakening process takes time, and without proper preparation, what if they were already awake? Zarathek paused, her alien features shifting to something Marcus was learning to recognize as hope mixed with disbelief. The Guardian Protocol. I had not considered, but it would require a direct neural link to the station's communication array, and with the harmonic damage. Could you survive it? Marcus asked. Survive, yes. But the feedback from damaged systems would be extremely painful, and there is no guarantee the signal would reach. Another groan from the station's superstructure cut her off. They were running out of time. Do it, Marcus said. I'll keep the communication array powered and stable. Marcus, you do not understand. To maintain power flow to damaged alien technology while I transmit an emergency awakening signal, the electrical feedback alone could kill you. Marcus was already moving toward the array, checking his tools. Wouldn't be the first time I've had to work with dangerous voltages. Besides, we're all dead anyway if this station comes apart. The other freed prisoners had organized evacuation teams, but even working with ruthless efficiency, they could only get a fraction of the population to safety. Marcus watched families being separated, individuals making impossible choices about who would get the limited spots on escape pods. There has to be another way, he muttered, connecting his portable power units to the damaged communication system. There is, said a new voice. Marcus turned to see one of the freed prisoners approaching. It was the graceful four-armed being he'd noticed during the battle, but now he could see details he'd missed before. Its skin had a metallic sheen, and its movements had the precision of advanced machinery. I am Tekvar of the Architect Guild, it said in perfect standard. We build the great ships that sail between stars. This station, for all its corruption, has good bones. It can be made to fly. Marcus blinked. You want to turn the entire station into a spaceship? The power cores are intact, the superstructure is damaged, but reparable, and the mass is well within acceptable parameters for emergency propulsion. Tekvar's four hands moved in complex gestures as it calculated. With the right modifications, we could reach inhabited systems before total structural failure. How long would those modifications take? Zarathek asked. With sufficient labor and materials, perhaps 4 hours. We don't have 4 hours, Marcus pointed out as another section of the station's lights failed. We do if someone can stabilize the harmonic cascade, Tekvar replied, looking directly at Marcus. The resonance frequency that damaged the collective's control systems, if properly modulated, could actually strengthen the station's structural integrity. Marcus felt that familiar sensation of being in way over his head. You want me to use the same technique that's tearing the station apart to hold it together? Harmonics work both ways, Tekvar explained. Destructive frequencies can become constructive with the right adjustments, but it would require precise timing and constant monitoring. Zarathek was already climbing back toward the communication array. I will send the awakening signal to my people, if any of them are close enough to help with the modifications. Wait, Marcus called. There's something else we need to consider. The prime node, is it really dead? A moment of silence fell over the group. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of evacuation efforts, the organized chaos of beings fighting for survival. The harmonic cascade damaged its integration with station systems, Zarathek said slowly. But an intelligence that old and complex, it may have retreat protocols, backup systems we know nothing about. As if summoned by her words, a weak version of the prime node's voice emerged from a damaged speaker nearby. Clever little mammals, but you have only delayed the inevitable. The voice cut out with a shower of sparks, but the message was clear. They were racing against time and a wounded but not dead enemy. Then, we finished this properly, Marcus said, picking up his resonance hammer again. Tekvar, start organizing your construction teams. Zarathek, get that signal sent. I'll keep the power flowing and see if I can tune these harmonics to something more constructive. And if the prime node tries to reassert control? Zarathek asked. Marcus smiled grimly. Then, I guess we'll find out just how stubborn a human mechanic can be. Over the next few hours, Station Kepler 7 became something unprecedented in galactic history. Hundreds of freed prisoners worked alongside thousands of newly liberated beings to transform a prison into a refuge. Tekvar's people restructured support beams and rerouted power conduits. Other species contributed according to their abilities. The crystalline beings provided computational power for navigation calculations. The wolfpack creatures served as messengers and coordinators, and the bear tank beings handled the heavy lifting. Marcus spent those hours in a state of controlled electrocution, his hands dancing across alien control systems while harmonic frequencies flowed through his body. Several times the prime node tried to reassert control, and each time Marcus had to fight a battle of willpower while maintaining critical power flows. When Zarathek's people finally arrived, Marcus was barely conscious, held upright only by his grip on the control console. But the station was flying, its improvised engines carrying tens of thousands of beings towards safety. The first Kithran ship to dock was sleek and predatory, designed for war, but capable of mercy. Its captain was an older version of Zarathek, with silver fur and scars that spoke of ancient battles. "Daughter," the captain said, embracing Zarathek briefly, "your warning reached us. The collective's false awakening signals have been identified and blocked. The prime node, contained but not destroyed. We will need to discuss long-term solutions." The captain's gaze shifted to Marcus, who was now sitting on the deck, and tried to remember how his fingers were supposed to work. "This is the human, Marcus Chun of Earth," Zarathek said with something like pride. "He freed me from my cage, fought beside me against impossible odds, and turned a space station into a ship to save thousands of lives." The captain studied Marcus for a long moment. The old stories speak of a young species that would rise among the stars, bringing chaos and hope in equal measure. Warriors without claws, builders without shells, survivors who refused to surrender even when logic demanded it. Marcus managed to look up. "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" The captain's expression shifted into what might have been amusement. "Among my people, it is the highest compliment possible. You have proven that your species are worthy guardians of the peace we fought so long to establish." "We're not warriors," Marcus protested weakly. "I'm just a mechanic who doesn't like seeing people in cages." "Exactly," Zarathek said softly. "You're guardians who do not know you are guardians. Perhaps that makes you the most dangerous kind of all." As the rescued station limped toward the nearest inhabited system, escorted by ships that looked like they were built from starlight and predatory grace, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. He'd come to fix mining equipment and ended up helping to prevent a galactic war. But then, again, he thought as he watched families reuniting and former prisoners helping each other heal, maybe that was just what humans did. They fixed things that were broken, even when those things were bigger and more complicated than they could possibly understand. Even when those things were themselves.